quoted by Sunni brothers and sisters. Hadith number 1, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, none of you reaches the reality of faith, reality of Iman, unless and until your will, your wanting would be subjected to that which I have brought from God. Meaning, if you could accord your will with that which I have brought from God, which is God's message, if you could accord your will with the will of God in the form of the message that I brought for you, then you can reach the reality of faith. Other than that, no. Another hadith says, I swear by the one in whose power is my life, meaning I swear by Allah. None of you reach the reality of faith or Iman unless and until I would be more beloved in your sight than you yourself to you. Meaning you would love me more than you love yourself. More than you would love your wealth. More than you would love your children. More than you would love all people altogether. If you could find such a thing in your heart as a matter of fact, not as a matter of simple claim and lip service, then you have reached, according to this hadith, the reality of faith. The Prophet must be more beloved to me than I to me. More beloved than my children. More beloved than my wealth, my possession, my properties. More beloved than all the people around me. My wife, my parents, my friends, my family members. So, this superiority in reality is in the path of benefit and welfare of people. Whether it's applied in the affairs of governing the society or governmental affairs, whether it's applied to the domain of managing the society of Muslims, or whether it's applied in individual affairs or individual aspects, personal aspects of an individual. Prophet has superiority over us in all those domains. Why? Because he is infallible. Why? Because he considers our welfare. He knows our welfare. Finally, in this juncture, I would like to say that this superiority, we may think, is a privilege, even though we are convinced, inshallah, by now, through glancing briefly through some of the verses of Quran, that this person to whom this superiority is granted by Allah considers our welfare, and it makes sense why that superiority is granted to him. But we may still think in the corner of our mind that this superiority granted to him is just a privilege to him. In fact, it has a heavy responsibility for him. I recite one hadith for you and you see that what that responsibility is all about. The hadith is from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He says, the Messenger of Allah says, I am superior based upon the dictation of Allah to every believer than himself to himself. And then he elaborates. He says, if a person dies and he leaves some property behind, of course his property are going to be distributed by his in the form of inheritance by the people who inherit from him. But if a person passes away and he is in debt, because I am superior to him than him to him, I am in charge of his debt. Can you imagine that? Look at the responsibility in here involved. If you are superior to believers than believers to themselves, then if a believer dies and he has debt, you are in charge of that. You are responsible for that. So we just don't have to look at this superiority in the form of privilege that, God forbid, jealousy would develop in our mind, and even sometimes complaint of some sort that why? I know my welfare better than anybody else. No, this superiority has responsibilities associated with it too. So anyhow, having said all of this, let us summarize. The one that we want to focus on is this: النبي أولى بالمؤمنين من أنفسهم. Prophet is superior to the believers than they are to themselves. Have that in mind, please, later on when we go to the ahadith from the book of our Sunni brothers and sisters. Then you are going to appreciate this one much more. The second verse of Quran that we are going to go to is reflected in chapter 33. Also, chapter 33, Surah Al-Ahzab, ayah 36. Chapter 33, ayah 36 says, وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مُؤْمِنَةٍ إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمْرًا أَنْ يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخِيَرَةُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِمْ. It is not fitting for any believer, male or female. Notice, by the way, this is very important and very interesting. Quran in here specifically mentions believer, male and female, gender of them even, in order to transfer this point to us that this principle is very universal. It includes everyone. وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مُؤْمِنَةٍ. It is not fitting for a believer, male or female, إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمْرًا أَنْ يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخِيَرَةُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِمْ. If Allah and the Messenger of Allah decide something, come up with an affair, come up with a command, it is not fitting for any believer, male or female, to have an opinion and option and choice of their own. Please pay attention to that principle, because we are going to use it. And remember, these are the words of Allah. Allah is establishing these principles regarding Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. You cannot find more universal and more absolute principle than this one. وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مُؤْمِنَةٍ إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمْرًا أَنْ يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخِيَرَةُ